Sex and Sorcery, the Crimson Quill. Friends, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook, and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you in advance. The most dangerous spells are not written in grimoires or whispered in forgotten tongues. They are written in the secret language of the heart, in the space between a breath and a decision. I have built my life around translating these spells into stories, dangerous tales of forbidden love that could see my writing hand severed if the Guild of Scribes ever discovered the author. But some truths are too intoxicating not to be told. Eldoria was holding its breath. The air, usually thick with the competing scents of spell dust, brine from the whispering sea, and sizzling street food, was unnervingly still. It was the week of the lunar masquerade, when the moon would be at its fullest and most potent, and the city was a jewel box of tension and anticipation. Magic, like desire, becomes restless before a culmination. I found my solace, as always, within the warm wooden womb of the moon and ember. Our table, tucked beside the great fireplace where embers pulsed like drowsy hearts, felt like the only real place in a city of illusions. I arrived first, the weight of a half-finished story, a romance between a guild assassin and the heir she was sent to kill, pressing on my mind. Miradoran found me there, a scroll of crimson-tipped legal briefs tucked under her arm like a weapon. She slid into the seat opposite me, her green eyes sparking with a familiar righteous fire. "Let me guess," I said, pushing a glass of moonfire wine toward her. "Another case that challenges the very fabric of our moral understanding?" "Worse," she declared, snapping her fingers to summon a floating quill that began taking notes in the air. "The Guild of Tenders, the Emotion Weavers, are suing the Alchemist Guild for irreparable emotional damages and copyright infringement of specific longing. Apparently, Kala's new line of Echoes of Ecstasy potions is creating synthetic memories that are interfering with the Tenders' curated experiences." I couldn't help but smile. "And who is the poor soul tasked with legally defining ecstasy?" "That would be me," she said, taking a long sip. "I've already billed 40 hours for philosophical and metaphysical research. It's almost enough to make me consider a career in something simple, like dragon taming." Our banter was cut short by the arrival of Kala Ren herself. She moved through the tavern like a sonnet, all flowing grace and layered meaning. Her gown was the color of a deep wound, and the air around her carried the scent of black roses and ozone. "Darlings," she purred, settling beside me and eyeing Myra's floating quill with amusement. "Are we legislating passion again? How very predictable." She produced a small crystal vial and let a single crimson drop fall into her wine, which swirled into a vortex of ruby light before settling. "A little clarity, and to counteract the desiccating effects of legal jargon." "My jargon is what keeps your unlicensed emotional experiments from landing you in a guild cell," Mira retorted, though the edge in her voice was blunted by affection. The final member of our quartet made her entrance not with a whisper, but with a thunderclap of energy. Bianna Storm arrived, her Storm Knight armor scuffed, her dark curls a wild cascade around a face flushed with exertion. She carried the scent of rain and cold stone. "Don't ask," she grumbled, collapsing into her chair and reaching for the wine carafe. "The commander had us securing the ether vaults ahead of the masquerade. As if a thief could even get close." She flexed her fingers and a tiny frustrated spark jumped between them. "I shattered a practice dummy today. Not broke. Shattered. Into 1,000 pieces." The new recruit looked at me as if I'd sprouted a second head. Her shoulders slumped. This curse, it's getting worse. I can feel the storm inside me scratching to get out. How can I ever? She didn't finish, but we all heard it. How can I ever let someone close? An understanding silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire. We were 4 pillars, each holding up a different corner of the sky, each with a crack we feared would one day bring it all down. It was then that the tavern door opened, and the world shifted on its axis. He was not like the polished guildsmen or the rough-hewn mercenaries who frequented the Moon and Ember. He was something else entirely. Dressed in dark, travel-worn leathers that hinted at a warrior's life, he moved with a predator's grace that was both lethal and poetic. His hair was the color of raven's wings, tied back from a face that was all sharp, elegant planes. A face made for shadows and tragedy. But it was his eyes that captured me. They were the color of amber, and they held a weariness that spoke of centuries, not years. In his hand he carried not a sword, but a long slender case of polished darkwood, etched with silver runes that seemed to drink the light. A collective inhale seemed to sweep through the tavern. He was a discordant note in our familiar symphony. "Well," Callum murmured, her alchemist's gaze intensifying, "there's a chemical reaction waiting to happen. The phenomenal output is formidable." "He has the look of a man with several outstanding warrants," Mira noted, her legal mind already cataloging potential violations. "Probably for tax evasion." Bianna was rigid, her hand instinctively drifting to the hilt of her short sword. "He feels old and dangerous, like a landslide waiting for the right tremor." But I could not speak. I could only watch him. He found a seat in a dark corner, his back to the wall, and placed the darkwood case on the table before him. He didn't order food or drink. He simply sat, his amber eyes scanning the room until they settled on our table. On me. A jolt like a spark from Bianna's fingers passed through me. It was not fear. It was recognition. Our conversation stumbled, our personal dramas suddenly feeling small and distant. The stranger was a silent question mark in the center of our lives. It was Mira who noticed the change first. Her floating quill, which had been diligently taking notes, suddenly shuddered and dissolved into a shower of crimson sparks. What in the 7 hells? A hush fell over the tavern. The embers in the great fireplace dimmed, their pulse slowing. The magical lanterns flickered. A profound silence descended, so deep we could hear the blood singing in our own ears. It was the silence of a held breath, of a world waiting. The stranger stood. He unlocked the darkwood case with a soft click. Inside, resting on a bed of black velvet, was a quill. Its shaft was carved from a single piece of blood-red crystal, and its nib was fashioned from what looked like solidified moonlight. It glowed with a soft, internal radiance. He lifted the quill, and his voice when he spoke was low and resonant, like stone grinding deep beneath the earth. "The Crimson Quill writes not with ink but with destiny," he announced, his words carrying through the unnatural silence. "It inscribes the true desires of the heart onto the fabric of the world. For centuries it has been lost." His amber eyes found mine again, and I felt pinned, like a butterfly in a collector's case. "But it has been awakened. It seeks its scribe." He took a step toward our table. The air grew cold. "My name is Theron," he said, his gaze including all of us but always returning to me. "I am the last of the Quill's guardians, and I have come to Eldoria because a prophecy, written by this very instrument, foretells that during the lunar masquerade, the quill will choose a new hand. That hand will either write an age of unparalleled wonder or unravel reality itself. He stopped before me, close enough that I could smell the cold night air and ancient leather on him. The quill trembles in your presence, Serena Vayne. It resonates with the stories you weave. It knows the power of your heart. He held out the Crimson Quill. It pulsed with a light that mirrored the frantic beating of my own heart. The masquerade begins at moonrise. The threads of fate are converging. The quill must write its story. The only question is, will you be its instrument? The silence in the moon and ember was no longer mere quiet. It was a physical entity, thick and heavy as a burial shroud. All eyes were fixed on the blood-red quill in Theron's hand, its pulsing light the only heartbeat in the still room. I could feel the weight of its regard, an ancient, sentient hunger focused solely on me. It wanted to write my story. The thought was as terrifying as it was intoxicating. Mira shattered the spell, her voice a blade of cold reason. A sentient artifact that writes destiny? That's not a tool, it's a tyrant. And prophecies are the legal system of the desperate, all precedent and no proof. She stood, her posture a fortress wall. We are not interested in being characters in your apocalyptic fairy tale. Theron's amber eyes didn't leave mine. It is not a matter of interest, Mistress Doran. It is a matter of resonance. The quill has slept for an age. It has awoken for her. You cannot litigate a force of nature. Watch me, Mira shot back. But her confidence seemed to waver against the quill's primal glow. Bianna stepped forward, placing her body slightly between Theron and me. The air around her crackled with contained energy. You say it unravels reality. What's to stop it from doing that if she touches it? Choice, Theron said, his gaze finally breaking from mine to meet Bianna's challenge. The quill reveals and amplifies the deepest, truest desires of the one who wields it. It does not create from nothing. It writes with the ink of the heart. A heart filled with chaos and unresolved tempests would indeed write a cataclysm. His eyes flicked to her sparking hands. But a heart that seeks order in the storm, protection for the innocent, that could write a new dawn. Calla, who had been observing with the focused intensity of a scholar at a breakthrough, finally spoke. The chemistry is unprecedented. It's not emitting magic. It's emitting potential. It's a catalyst. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of awe and warning. Serena, your stories, they aren't just fiction, are they? They are your desires, given safe passage onto parchment. This quill would simply skip the parchment. Her words struck the core of my fear. I was safe behind my words. What would happen if they became immediately, undeniably real? Why now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why me? The lunar masquerade is a time when veils are thin, Theron explained. Not just between guilds and classes, but between what is and what could be. The quill feeds on that liminal energy. And you? He took a step closer, and the scent of him, old leather, cold starlight, and something wild washed over me. You live in those spaces. You write of the love that exists between the lines of guild law, the passion that thrives in the shadows of propriety. The quill doesn't just want a scribe. It wants an artist. He was offering me the ultimate pen, the power to not just tell stories but to make them real, to rewrite the rules of a world I often found suffocating. The temptation was a dizzying vertigo, a siren call to the most secret part of my soul. And what is your role in this, Guardian? Mira demanded, her arms crossed. To simply deliver the weapon and watch the fireworks. A shadow of profound weariness crossed Theron's face. My role is to ensure the quill is not misused. My bloodline has been bound to it since the first stroke was written. I feel its hunger, its impulses. For 300 years I have kept it dormant, safe. But the cycle has turned. It must write, or its pent-up potential will detonate, unmaking everything in a wave of chaotic possibility. My duty is to guide its chosen hand, to be the steadying influence. 300 years. The number hung in the air. He was not just a warrior. He was a relic, a monument to a duty that had cost him his own life. The decision was a stone in my gut. If I refused, the quill might destroy the city in a spontaneous eruption of unfulfilled destiny. If I accepted, I would become the conduit for a power I could not possibly understand, with a near stranger as my only guide. I looked at my friends, at Mira, whose logic was a shield against a world that had broken her heart, at Kala, who sought to bottle the essence of feeling because she was afraid of drowning in it, at Biana, who wore her strength as both armor and a cage. I saw the same fear in their eyes that was clawing at my throat, but I also saw a fierce, unwavering loyalty. They would follow me into this madness. It seems, I said, my voice gaining strength, we are attending the masquerade after all. The grand Ethereum was transformed. For the lunar masquerade, the vast court sphere was filled with swirling, enchanted mist that reflected the faces of the revelers back at them in distorted, idealized forms. Nobles in peacock feather masks waltzed with guild mistresses whose faces were shifting constellations of light. The air thrummed with magic, perfume, and the heady promise of anonymous desire. It was the perfect feeding ground for the quill. We moved through the crowd, a tense, determined island. Theron walked slightly ahead, a dark and silent lodestone. The Crimson Quill was now tucked into a leather harness on his back, its glow muted but still perceptible, a bloody star against the dark leather. I could feel its pull, a constant low-grade hum in my blood. "The plan," Mira said, her voice tight beneath her simple silver mask, "is to get through this night without causing a reality-shattering paradox. We find a quiet corner. Let Serena hold the quill for a moment. Let it scribble something benign. And then the Guardian can lock it away for another 3 centuries. A sound, if profoundly unimaginative, strategy," Kala replied, her own mask a cascade of glittering obsidian shards. "But you cannot approach a primal force of creation with a legal brief. You must speak its language. The language of symbol, of archetype, of want." Biana said nothing. Her mask was a simple affair of polished steel, but her body was a live wire, her senses stretched to their limit, scanning for any threat in the magical cacophony. We found a slightly more secluded balcony overlooking the main dance floor. The full moon hung heavy and ripe in the sky, its silver light a counterpoint to the gaudy magical colors below. "Now," Theron said, his voice low. He unslung the quill and held it out to me. "Take it. Do not try to command it. Simply hold it. Let it feel the texture of your soul." My hand trembled as I reached for it. The moment my fingers closed around the blood-red crystal shaft, the world dissolved. It was not a vision. It was a knowing. I felt the desires of everyone in the Ethereum not as thoughts, but as a roaring, chaotic symphony. The Grand Justiciar's desperate hunger for respect, a young apprentice's aching loneliness, Lady Alara's secret wish to burn her own manor down and run away to sea, and my friend's, Myra's deep, buried wish for the man who broke her heart to return, just so she could have the satisfaction of turning him away. Kala's terrifying longing to drink one of her own potions and finally, truly feel an unmedicated emotion. Byanna's most secret desire was not for control, but for surrender. To find someone so strong, so unbreakable, that she could finally let the storm out without fear of causing harm. The torrent was overwhelming. The quill grew warm in my hand, its light blazing. It was drinking it all in. Serena. Theron's voice was sharp, cutting through the psychic noise. Anchor yourself. Your own desire. Focus on that. I tried. I pushed past the cacophony of 1,000 hearts and sought my own truth. What did I, Serena Vayne, truly want? Not just to write about passion, but to live a great epic love. To find a connection that was as profound and world-altering as the stories I crafted. I wanted a love that was a collaboration, a story written by two hands. The quill reacted violently. It jerked in my hand, and a single blazing line of silver light, a sentence of pure destiny, shot from its tip and etched itself into the very air before us. The words hung there, shimmering. The broken crown seeks its storm. A collective gasp went up from those nearby who saw it. The words hung for a moment, then shattered into 1,000 motes of light that showered down onto the dance floor. And then the world changed. The marble floor of the Ethereum cracked open, not with violence but with inevitability. From the fissure, a throne of twisted, petrified roots and shattered obsidian rose, and upon it sat a figure made of shadow and regret. He was a king or the ghost of one, a crown of broken metal hovering askew over his brow. His eyes were voids of sorrow. At the same time, the magical mists in the hall coalesced into a raging thunderhead directly above Byanna. Lightning, real and terrifying, arced from it, earthing itself in her body. She cried out, not in pain but in shock, as the storm she had always held inside was pulled from her, given form and purpose. The broken king on his throne looked at Byanna, the living storm, and a look of devastating, ancient longing crossed his spectral face. "No," Theron whispered, his face ashen. "It didn't just write a desire. It wrote a meeting. It has made her heart's counterpart manifest." The quill was no longer just a pen. It was a matchmaker for forces of nature. And it had just written Byanna's deepest, most impossible secret into existence. The chaos in the Ethereum was instantaneous. The masquerade was over. The broken king rose from his throne, and the storm above Byanna roared in response. Theron's hand closed over mine on the quill's shaft, his grip firm. "It has begun," he said, his amber eyes filled with a storm of their own. "And now we must write the next chapter, before their story destroys the city." Chaos was too small a word. The Grand Ethereum, a moment ago a scene of curated enchantment, became a primal landscape. The broken king did not move with aggression, but with a profound gravitational pull. Where he stepped, the marble floor did not crack, but aged, withering into dust and memory. The storm above Byanna did not rage with mindless fury. It wept torrents of cold, clean rain that washed the gaudy magic from the air, leaving behind the stark scent of ozone and wet stone. They were two halves of a catastrophic equation, and the space between them warped with the force of their attraction. "We have to separate them," Mira yelled over the howling wind, her legal mind grappling with a problem that had no precedent. "You cannot litigate a ghost away from his heart's desire." Kala shouted back, her eyes alight not with fear, but with a furious analytical wonder. "The chemistry is perfect. His stillness to her motion, his decay to her vitality. It's the most beautiful, terrible alchemy I have ever witnessed. Byanna was at the center of it all, a conduit. The lightning that had always terrified her now wreathed her not as a curse, but as a crown. She stood tall, her face a mask of awe and terror as she looked at the spectral king. "I can feel him," she gasped. "His sorrow, it's an anchor. For the first time, I'm not afraid I'll fly apart." The Crimson Quill was a live wire in my hand. Its pulse synced with the violent, beautiful rhythm of the unfolding drama. It was writing, not in words but in reality itself, inscribing the story of the broken king and his storm directly onto the world. Theron's hand was still on mine, his grip a tether. The quill is feeding on the narrative. We can't stop it, but we can steer it. You are the author, Serena. Give it a new direction. My mind raced, drowning in the psychic noise of 1,000 panicked desires. I couldn't think. I could only feel. And what I felt was Theron's hand, solid and real. His centuries of loneliness a mirror to the king's. His steadfast duty a wall against the chaos. My own desire, the one I had focused on, echoed in the hollow space the quill had created. A collaboration. A story written by two hands. I turned my head, our faces inches apart in the maelstrom. Rain plastered his dark hair to his brow, and in his amber eyes, I saw not the weary guardian, but the man who had carried his burden for 300 years, waiting. "Help me," I breathed. It was all the invitation he needed. His free hand came up to cradle my jaw, his thumb stroking my cheek. It was not the kiss from the labyrinth, all chaos and defiance. This was different. This was a confluence. When his lips met mine, it was a signing of a pact. A silent vow between a writer and her muse, a woman and her guardian. It was a kiss of shared purpose, of terrifying, exhilarating trust. The quill erupted. A wave of pure, golden light exploded from us, not destructive but definitive. It washed over the Ethereum, and for a breathtaking moment, the very fabric of the world became like parchment. The roaring storm, the decaying king, the screaming nobles, all were rendered in shimmering, ethereal lines of potential. And in that moment I understood. I didn't need to write a new story. I needed to edit the one already being written. With Theron's will fused to mine, I focused not on separating the king and the storm, but on completing them. I poured our own collaborative energy, the trust, the nascent love, the shared burden, into the narrative. I showed the quill a different ending, not a tale of destructive convergence, but of healing synthesis. The golden wave receded, pulling the potential of the world back into solid form. The storm above Byanna softened from a raging tempest into a gentle, swirling mist that wove through the broken king's form. The decaying aura around him stilled, the withered marble at his feet sprouting tiny, glowing mosses. He was no longer a king of ruin, but a lord of gentle endings and new growth. Byanna, her lightning now a soft, internal luminescence, took a tentative step forward. She reached out, not with a warrior's hand, but a woman's, and touched his spectral arm. There was no cataclysm, only a profound, settling peace. The quill grew still in my hand, its crimson light dimming to a soft, satisfied glow. The connection severed, and I would have collapsed if Theron's arms hadn't been there to catch me. The silence that returned to the Ethereum was stunned, then slowly filled with the sounds of wonder. The manifestation of the king and the storm had not vanished. They had been integrated, their story rewritten from tragedy into a quiet, hopeful mystery. They stood together, a new, stable, magical entity, a testament to a balance that had been found. It was over. In the days that followed, Eldoria buzzed with the miracle. The Broken King and the Storm Knight became guardians of the city's forgotten places, a symbol of how even the most destructive forces could find peace. Mira, inspired, began drafting the first legal frameworks for sentient magical manifestations. Kala abandoned her pursuit of bottled emotion, declaring that the real chemistry was in the unpredictable reactions between living hearts. And Theron, he did not leave. We stood on the balcony of my scriptorium, watching the sun set over a city that felt newer, softer. The Crimson Quill rested in its case on my desk, dormant, its hunger sated for another age. "The guardianship is fulfilled," Theron said softly. "The quill is bound to you now. My duty is done." I looked up at him, at the 3 centuries of loneliness finally easing from his shoulders. "And what will you do now that you are free?" He turned to me, and the setting sun set his amber eyes on fire. He no longer looked like a monument but a man who had chosen to stay. "I have spent lifetimes ensuring stories were written correctly," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I find I would like to live one. With the author." He cupped my face, and this kiss was not one of desperation or shared purpose. It was a beginning. It was slow and deep, and full of the promise of 1,000 unwritten pages. It tasted of starlight and possibility, and the simple, profound joy of a story that was finally our own. I keep the quill. It sits on my desk, a silent partner. I no longer write tales of forbidden love for secret circulation. I write true stories, chronicles of a city learning to breathe again, of a warrior and her king, of an alchemist and a lawyer finding new ways to define the world. And sometimes, in the deep quiet of the night, I write of a guardian and a scribe. The most powerful stories, I have learned, are not those written by a magical quill that can reshape reality. They are the ones we live, the ones we choose every day to write with our own hands, our own hearts, in the messy, beautiful, and perfect ink of our own lives. And the best ones, the ones that truly last, are always a collaboration. And so the final stroke of the Crimson Quill fades, leaving a world forever changed by the power of a story. We hope you were swept away by this tale of destiny, desire, and the courage to rewrite your own heart. But the library of Velvet Valor holds countless more stories waiting to be told. If the Crimson Quill captured your imagination, then you're in the right place. Velvet Valor Romantasy Audiobook is your sanctuary for full-length, cinematic tales where love is the most powerful magic of all. Ready for your next adventure? Subscribe to Velvet Valor Romantasy Audiobook and never miss a new story. Let us be your guide through enchanted worlds and unforgettable romances. Like this video if you believe that the right story can change everything. Your likes help us know which worlds you want to visit next. Comment below and tell us. If the Crimson Quill could write one thing into your life, what would it be? Your deepest desire? Your perfect match? We read every comment and love hearing your stories. Your support is the magic that allows us to create these full-length audiobooks for you. Thank you for listening, for believing in magic, and for being part of our story. Until our next journey begins, yours in romance and fantasy, the Velvet Valor narrator.